The annual Intergalactic Apex Predator Summit was, as usual, a complete disaster waiting to happen. You'd think gathering the most dangerous species from 12 galaxies in one place would be a terrible idea, but somehow they'd managed to do it for the past 3,000 years without anyone getting eaten. Well, almost anyone. There was that one incident with the coffee intern, but the official report chalked that up to enthusiastic sampling of the refreshments. Chief Ambassador Pex'thor adjusted his ceremonial molt cloak with his primary hunting appendages, mandibles clicking in mild annoyance as he surveyed the Grand Assembly chamber. The space station's architects had really outdone themselves this time, creating a perfectly spherical room with crystalline walls that shifted colors based on the emotional pheromones of its occupants. Right now, it was cycling through various shades of aggressive red with occasional flashes of "I'm definitely not intimidated" purple. Order. Order in the chamber. Pex'thor's voice resonated through the specialized atmosphere mix that allowed all species to communicate. The 3047th Annual Intergalactic Apex Predator Summit is now in session. First on our agenda, territorial expansion claims in the Outer Rim. A symphony of growls, hisses, and what could only be described as otherworldly throat singing filled the chamber. In the front row, Ambassador Drachnid of the Serpentine Dominion was doing that thing with his neck frills again. The one that meant either I object most strenuously, or these seats are uncomfortable. It was always hard to tell with the Serpentines, especially since their last diplomatic handbook update was about 4 centuries overdue. The chair recognizes High Hunter Mox of the Nexus Sworn. Pex'thor announced, mentally preparing himself for what would undoubtedly be another long-winded speech about the superior hunting techniques of quantum phase wasps. Mox buzzed to the central platform, her crystalline wings catching the light in a way that was probably meant to be threatening but mostly just gave everyone a headache. Esteemed colleagues. She began, her translator struggling to convert the complex frequencies of her native buzz into something comprehensible. For too long, the Outer Rim has been. She never got to finish that sentence. The chamber's emergency alert system suddenly activated, bathing everything in a garish yellow light that clashed horribly with Ambassador Zizarax's bioluminescent spots. A holographic display materialized in the center of the room, showing a sector of space that made several members of the assembly instinctively bare their teeth, retract their eye stalks, or in the case of the gelatinous delegation from Galaxy 7, anxiously divide into smaller versions of themselves. Priority alert from the Exploration Corps announced the automated system in its carefully neutral tone. Incident report from Sector 3447, designation Earth. The reaction was immediate. The chamber's walls shifted to a color that could only be described as existential dread. Chartreuse. Ambassador Drachnid's neck frills deflated entirely. 3 members of the crystalline hive mind collective known as the Shine Bright Hunters actually cracked. Pex'thor raised all 4 of his primary appendages for silence, which was completely unnecessary as the chamber had gone quieter than a black hole hiccup. Well, he said, his mandibles forming what passed for a grimace in his species, it appears we need to address this situation. Again. In the back of the chamber, someone whispered the word humans in their native tongue. Several delegates instinctively reached for their ceremonial weapons, while others began muttering emergency prayers to various cosmic entities. Before we proceed, Pex'thor continued, trying to maintain some semblance of order, I would like to remind everyone that this is a diplomatic summit, and therefore, the traditional response of nuke it from orbit is not an acceptable solution, no matter how many times it's suggested by the distinguished representative from the Pyrolithic Confederation. He fixed his compound eyes on a particularly volcanic-looking delegate who had the grace to look somewhat abashed, magma cooling slightly around their edges. The holographic display zoomed in on a small blue-green planet that looked deceptively harmless. But everyone in that chamber knew better. They'd all seen the reports. They'd all heard the stories. And now, it seemed, they were about to hear another one. Pex'thor clicked his mandibles together in the universal gesture of why did it have to be my shift, and prepared to open the floor for discussion. It was going to be a very long day in the Grand Assembly chamber. The giant display shifted to show archived footage from 3 solar cycles ago, and a collective shudder ran through the assembly. Everyone knew what was coming. The infamous Pex'thor Incident had become required viewing at the Academy of Interstellar Conquest, filed under How Not to Scout Primitive Planets and Why We Don't Talk About Earth. Scout Commander Pex'thor had been the pride of the Exploration Corps. 6 tentacles of pure muscle, armor plating that could deflect plasma bolts, and enough natural toxins in his skin to kill a small moon. He'd charted hostile worlds across 3 galaxies and lived to file the paperwork. He was, as his species liked to say, the apexest of apex predators. Was being the operative word. The footage began with Pex'thor's standard mission log approaching unclassified planet in sector 3447. Initial scans show primitive civilization, barely achieved atmospheric flight. No energy shields, no orbital defenses, no. There was a pause as he double-checked his instruments. No unified planetary government? How are they not extinct? Initiating closer observation. Several members of the assembly squirmed uncomfortably in their seats, knowing what was about to happen. Ambassador Drachnid's neck frills had completely retracted into his scales. Day 1 Pex'thor's voice continued, now slightly less confident. Encountered first defensive system. Microscopic flying creatures with biological injection weapons. Primitive but effective. They tracked me despite my cloaking technology and penetrated my armor with remarkable precision. Currently experiencing unusual reaction to their toxin. Appendages feel itchy. Itchy. The footage showed Pex'thor, mighty hunter of the cosmos, frantically trying to scratch 6 different tentacles at once while cursing in 17 different languages. Day 2 located what appears to be a high-security compound. Large open space, carefully maintained vegetation, multiple hostile entities. They call it a park. The camera panned across a peaceful scene that made several delegates close their optical organs in horror. The dominant species allows their young to freely interact with the hostile entities, either as some form of survival training or… Wait, what is that? The camera swung wildly to focus on what everyone in the assembly now recognized as a Canadian goose. The bird looked directly into the camera, and somehow, despite millions of years of evolution separating their species, managed to convey pure, undiluted contempt. Fascinating defensive bioweapon. Pex'thor's voice had risen several octaves. It appears to be powered by pure hatred, attempting peaceful contact. No, abort. The next 30 seconds of footage consisted mainly of panicked tentacle flailing and the sound of angry honking. 3 of the more sensitive delegates had to be escorted from the chamber. Day 3 Pex'thor wheezed, now recording from what he believed was a secure location. Have taken shelter in what appears to be a residential structure. Signs of occupation, but no immediate threats. We'll use this opportunity to recover and wait. What's that sound? The assembly watched in collective dread as a small, furry creature sauntered into view. Several delegates gasped as they recognized the infamous Earth entity known as Mr. Whiskers. Encountering new life form, Pex'thor whispered. Small, appears to be some sort of sentient fur with legs. Displaying non-threatening behavior. Perhaps I can. Why is it making that noise? Why is it showing its teeth? Why H. The footage devolved into chaos. There were flashes of fur, screams in multiple octaves, and the distinct sound of expensive exploration equipment being knocked off high surfaces. The last clear image showed Pex'thor, mighty hunter of 3 galaxies, trying to hide from a housecat in what humans would recognize as a kitchen cabinet. Final log came Pex'thor's shaking voice, now recorded from the safety of his ship in high orbit. Planet Earth is equipped with multiple layers of defense systems beyond our current understanding. The dominant species appears to be either immune or suicidally brave, coexisting with these entities in some form of symbiotic horror. Recommendation: classify as extreme hazard zone. Also, requesting immediate medical attention and trauma counseling, and a change of armor, for unrelated reasons. The footage ended, leaving the chamber in uncomfortable silence. Thak cleared his throat, a sound like gravel in a garbage disposal. As you all know, this report went viral across all 12 galaxies. The resulting mimetic entertainment spawned over 4 million variations, including the now infamous scared Pex'thor reaction GIF. Point of order, came a wavering voice from the crystalline delegation. Is it true that the entity known as Mr. Whiskers was merely a juvenile specimen? The chamber erupted into alarmed chittering. Thak raised his appendages for silence again. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Before we discuss the disturbing implications of Earth's defensive capabilities, we should review the additional evidence gathered since the Pex'thor incident. In the back of the chamber, someone started quietly humming the tune that had become unofficially known as the Ballad of Pex'thor and the Murder Fluff. They were quickly shushed by their neighbors, but not before several other delegates had instinctively started tapping their appendages to the rhythm. The holographic display flickered as it loaded the next set of evidence, which the Assembly had unofficially dubbed the compilation of failures. K'arthak noted with mild concern that the chamber walls had shifted to an uncomfortable shade of psychological trauma mauve. Following the Pex'thor Incident, K'arthak began. Several other reconnaissance missions attempted to assess Earth's true defensive capabilities. We'll start with Ambassador Glixtar's encounter. The aforementioned ambassador, a towering mass of crystalline spikes and bioelectric death rays, attempted to sink into their seat. This was quite impressive for a being composed primarily of diamond-hard crystals. The footage began playing. Glixtar's mission had seemed promising at first. They'd managed to land in something called a park during a period of low human activity. The ambassador's crystalline form had even allowed them to pose as a modern art installation for several hours. All proceeding according to plan, came Glixtar's confident initial report. Humans appear to accept unusual structures without question. Have observed several taking what they call selfies with my lower crystalline matrix. Preparing to begin detailed scan of what is that. The camera focused on a small, furry creature with a bushy tail. Several delegates who had studied Earth fauna immediately covered their sensory organs. Some sort of primitive maintenance drone, Glixtar's voice continued, still confident. Appears to be collecting and storing objects. Fascinating. I shall observe it. Why is it approaching me? Why is it? Oh no. What followed was 2 minutes of increasingly panicked footage as a single squirrel decided that Glixtar's crystalline protrusions would make an excellent place to store acorns for winter. The mighty ambassador, capable of channeling enough energy to power a small city, was reduced to helplessly vibrating as the tiny creature scampered all over their form, occasionally stopping to chitter what seemed to be criticism about Glixtar's structural integrity. The squirrel incident was just the beginning. K'arthak continued as the footage faded out, diplomatically ignoring Glixtar's attempt to merge with their chair. Observe this compilation of human interactions with Earth's defensive organisms. The display showed a series of rapid clips: humans casually handling snakes, keeping spiders as pets, swimming with creatures called sharks, and most disturbingly something called a petting zoo, where humans deliberately encouraged their young to interact with various biological weapons. Are they immune to all toxins? Gasped a member of the venomous collective, their poison sacs deflating in shock. Worse, K'arthak clicked grimly. They appear to be actively attracted to potentially lethal creatures. Observe this footage from their information networks. The display showed a series of images labeled cute danger noodles and spicy sky raisins, followed by humans intentionally approaching something called a murder log to take pictures. But surely their young are protected, came a hopeful query from the Broodmother Consortium. In response, the display showed a human child gleefully chasing pigeons, then cutting to an adult frantically trying to prevent another child from putting something called a Tide Pod in their mouth. As you can see, K'arthak continued, his molt cloak rustling with concern. The humans appear to lack even basic survival instincts. Yet somehow they thrive. The latest reports suggest they keep smaller versions of apex predators in their dwellings. They call them. The chamber erupted into alarmed chittering. A representative from the Fanged Dominion actually fainted, their ceremonial teeth clattering across the floor. Most disturbing of all, K'arthak clicked, mandibles trembling slightly. Is this final piece of evidence? The display showed a human female approaching what was clearly a member of Earth's apex species, a small fuzzy creature with pointed ears and a tail. The human made a strange high-pitched noise and proceeded to rub the creature's stomach. The being you're watching is known as a cat, K'arthak explained over the sound of several delegates retching. The humans have somehow managed to establish a complex symbiotic relationship with these entities. They provide them with food, shelter, and something called cardboard boxes in exchange for, well, we're not entirely sure. Our scientists are still trying to understand the power dynamic. The chamber walls had now shifted to a color that didn't exist in most visible spectrums. It could best be described as existential panic squared. The floor is now open for debate, K'arthak announced, immediately regretting his words as 37 different appendages shot into the air. The chamber walls swirled with colors representing everything from righteous indignation to barely contained panic. A point of order bellowed Representative NX Thor of the Titanium Talon Collective, his metallic feathers bristling. We cannot simply ignore the obvious explanation. These humans must be using advanced psychological warfare. No species would willingly approach a murder log for what they call a selfie unless they were secretly immortal. Or perhaps chittered Professor ZT of the Hive Academy, antennae twitching nervously. They're all insane. Have we considered the possibility that their entire species suffers from a collective lack of survival instincts? It would explain the existence of something called parkour. Ambassador Drachnid's neck frills had finally re-emerged, now pulsing with scholarly interest. My research suggests an alternative theory. What we're witnessing might be what I call the human paradox. They appear to be simultaneously the most fearless and most fearful species we've encountered. They'll run screaming from a tiny arachnid, then turn around and try to pet something called a lion while saying, "Here, kitty, kitty." That's not how classification works, roared General Vrax of the Plasma Fang dynasty, slamming all three of his tails against his seat. You can't just make up scientific terms because humans confuse you. Next you'll be telling us their Florida man is a separate subspecies. Actually interrupted a meek voice from the computational collective. We've been running analyses on Florida man for 3 cycles, and we still can't determine. Enough. K.R. Thak's voice cut through the chaos. We need solutions, not theories. The diplomatic corps has suggested establishing formal first contact. The chamber erupted into sounds that would have shattered lesser sound systems. Several delegates began molting in pure stress. "You want us to talk to them?" shrieked High Hunter Mox, her wings vibrating at frequencies that made several crystalline delegates crack. "Have you seen what they do for entertainment? They intentionally jump out of perfectly functional flying machines." "For fun," added another delegate. "They call it extreme sports." And let's not forget, rumbled a member of the Abyssal Deep Hunters. They've explored only 5% of their own oceans, yet they keep going back in. Who does that? Who looks at an environment that's actively trying to kill them and says, "Let's go deeper"? K.R. Thak clicked his mandibles for silence. The diplomatic corps suggests that their apparent lack of fear might make them ideal candidates for peaceful. "Have you seen what they eat?" interrupted Ambassador Glixtar, apparently having recovered enough to join the debate. "They deliberately cultivate plants that cause them pain. They call them spices and actively seek out the ones that hurt the most. And they drink poison for enjoyment," added another delegate. "Something called coffee that's literally a plant's natural defense system, and they just brew it first thing in the morning." The chamber walls were now cycling through colors so quickly that several delegates had to activate their anti-seizure protocols. Perhaps ventured a brave soul from the diplomatic corps. We're overreacting. Surely a species that hasn't even achieved interstellar travel. They strapped themselves to explosives to reach their own moon, came a horrified shout. Before they even had computers, they looked at space, did the math by hand, and said, "Yes, let's ride an explosion up there." And now they're planning to do the same thing to reach something called Mars. E for science, added another voice hysterically. Not even for resources or conquest, they just want to know what's there. K.R. Thak watched as the debate devolved into various species sharing their favorite humans or terrifying stories. Someone had started a presentation about something called honey collection that was making even the most hardened warriors squirm in their seats. "They're going to find us eventually," noted the computational collective's representative, their neural networks pulsing with concern. "Our projections suggest they'll achieve interstellar travel within a few centuries, probably by strapping even bigger explosions to themselves." A heavy silence fell over the chamber as everyone contemplated this horrifying future. The walls settled into a deep shade of impending doom burgundy. "Well said," K.R. Thak, feeling the weight of history on his molt cloak. "It appears we need to make a decision." K.R. Thak activated the chamber's central holographic display, which now showed a detailed map of Sector 3447. With a gesture of his primary hunting appendage, he highlighted a sphere of space centered on Earth. "Distinguished delegates," he began, his mandibles set in a grim line, "I present for your consideration Proposal X-117, codenamed Let's Not Die Today, the creation of an official Earth exclusion zone." The displayed sphere pulsed with warning colors as K.R. Thak continued. A radius of 50 light-years around the Sol system. No exploration, no contact, no passing through, even if you're just taking a shortcut to Alpha Centauri. Point of order, interrupted a delegate from the Plasma Fang dynasty. Is 50 light-years sufficient? Have we considered the possibility of humans achieving faster than light travel by? I don't know. Strapping antimatter to their ships, because it seemed like a cool idea. The computational collective has run the numbers, K'arthak replied. 50 light-years should give us approximately 3 centuries of warning before they start showing up at our doorsteps, asking if we want to hang out with their pet apex predators. The chamber's voting system activated, causing each delegate station to glow with anticipation. K'arthak raised all 4 primary appendages in the traditional gesture of moment of extreme seriousness. We will now vote on the following measures. First, the immediate establishment of the Earth exclusion zone. Second, the classification of Earth as a category Ohio no planet. Third, the implementation of new safety protocols, including but not limited to mandatory escape route planning for all ships passing within 100 light-years of Earth, emergency human encounter drills, installation of anti-cat defense systems on all vessels, regular screening of the Pex'thor Incident footage for training purposes, immediate evacuation procedures if anyone hears something described as a goose honk, automatic self-destruct cancellation if the target is wearing something called a Florida man shirt. All in favor. The chamber erupted in a symphony of affirmative votes. Representatives practically fought to be the first to agree. The walls blazed with enthusiastic self-preservation chartreuse. Any opposed? The silence was broken only by what sounded suspiciously like Ambassador Drachnid's stress molting again. Any abstentions? A junior delegate from the computational collective raised an appendage. Query, should we not gather more data about their Florida man phenomenon before? Vote yes, screamed the entire chamber in unison. The junior delegate quickly complied. Motion carried, K'arthak announced, trying to keep the relief out of his voice. The vote is unanimous. Let the records show that for the first time in the 3,047 years of the Intergalactic Apex Predator Summit, we have achieved complete agreement without anyone being eaten. The chamber's AI began implementing the new protocols immediately. Warning beacons sprang to life across the sector. Navigation systems updated to show Earth as a pulsing red dot labeled Nope. Training programs began incorporating new modules, such as how to identify a squirrel before it's too late, and basic anti-goose maneuvers. One final item K'arthak added as the chamber began to settle. The computational collective has prepared a series of cover stories to explain our ship's new flight patterns. Current favorite is that sector is undergoing routine maintenance. For 3 centuries, asked a skeptical delegate. Have you seen their infrastructure repair times? They'll believe it, came the confident reply. As the assembly began to disperse, a quiet voice from the back asked, but what happens when they do reach us? The chamber fell silent again. The walls shifted to a color best described as collective existential crisis. The diplomatic corps will begin preparing for that eventuality, K'arthak announced. Current suggestions include pretending we're not home, leaving a note saying we've moved to another universe, or my personal favorite, telling them our entire civilization is actually an art installation. Given their relationship with modern art, they might believe that last one, muttered Ambassador Glix TA, still traumatized from their park statue experience. Meeting adjourned, K'arthak declared. May the cosmos protect us all when humanity finally figures out faster than light travel. Probably by accident, while trying to make their coffee maker work better. The chamber walls flashed one final color, nervous laughter teal. Meanwhile, on the small blue planet that had just caused an interstellar panic attack, it was a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. In a suburban park, the same one where Ambassador Glix TA had suffered their crystalline crisis, a young girl was cheerfully feeding squirrels while her mother tried to convince her that no, they couldn't take one home. They already had 3 cats, 2 snakes, and a tarantula named Mr. Sparkles. A few benches away, a wildlife photographer was attempting to get the perfect shot of a Canadian goose. The goose, maintaining its species' reputation for diplomacy, was attempting to get the perfect angle to commit assault and battery. Neither was willing to back down. At the local pet shop, Perfect pets for peculiar people. Owner Tom Martinez was going through his usual opening routine. He checked on the rescue pythons, all booped on their snoots, misted the tarantula enclosure extra spray for Mr. Giggles, who was molting, and refilled the coffee maker with the special blend he'd created himself, a combination so potent it had once made a health inspector cry. "Morning, Carol," he called out to his favorite regular customer as the bell above the door chimed. "Here to get more food for your honey badger." "Not today," Carol replied cheerfully, ducking under a friendly macaw's attempt to nest in her hair. "Looking for a new friend for Theodore." "Theodore? That's your emotional support alligator, right?" "That's the one. Poor baby's been lonely since we moved from Florida. I'm thinking maybe a monitor lizard? Something friendly that can keep up with him on walks." Tom nodded sagely while preventing a particularly enthusiastic python from attempting to hug a customer. Just another normal day. Outside, a jogger paused to take a selfie with what they swore was some kind of modern art installation in the park, completely unaware they were posing next to the still traumatized remains of an alien ambassador's surveillance equipment. In a nearby garden, a cat named Princess Stabby Paws, formerly Mr. Whiskers, lounged in the sun, occasionally batting at passing insects with the same paw that had once sent a mighty alien explorer hiding in a kitchen cabinet. Her human called her precious baby, the local wildlife called her the destroyer. Both were accurate. At the city zoo, a tour guide was explaining to a group of excited children why they couldn't actually ride the lions, no matter how much they promised to be careful. In the background, a zookeeper was casually hand-feeding a massive snake while cooing, "Who's a handsome noodle?" "You are. Yes, you are." And high above the Earth's atmosphere, entirely unnoticed by the humans going about their day, the last of the warning beacons blinked to life. A small ship, making a delivery run to Alpha Centauri, took one look at the new NOPE designation on their navigation system and decided that yes, actually the scenic route through the Carina Nebula would be lovely this time of year. As the sun set over this completely ordinary day on Earth, Carol left the pet shop with a baby monitor lizard she'd named Cupcake. The photographer admitted tactical defeat to the Goose final score camera equipment 0, Goose's dignity 1, and Princess Stabby Paws settled in for an evening of being treated like royalty while plotting mild chaos. Tom Martinez closed up his shop, double-checking that all the deadly creatures were securely tucked in for the night. He gave Mr. Wiggles an extra cricket for being a good spider, assured the pythons they were indeed the prettiest danger noodles in the galaxy, and headed home to his own menagerie of creatures that would give most alien species nightmares. Just another typical day on the planet that had just been officially designated as "oh no" by 12 galaxies worth of apex predators. As he locked the door, Tom paused to admire what he assumed was a particularly sparkly piece of modern art in the park across the street. He mused, looks almost like some sort of alien crystalline being frozen in terror. The artists in this town are getting really creative. Behind him, safely contained in their enclosures, Earth's collection of deadly creatures settled in for the night, dreaming whatever dreams come to beings that had somehow ended up as beloved pets on a planet that 12 galaxies had just agreed to avoid at all costs. And somewhere in deep space, K'Arthak was adding a final note to the official record of the day's historic vote, addendum to Earth classification warning: they think everything is cute. Everything. May the cosmos help us all.